Are we recording, Jerry?
We are.
Yeah.
This is no radio. No one will sing. At the end of the singing, but narrative and backstabbing belong to them. This is the Wireless Banter Show. Banter Show. Jerry looks at what Wi-Fi 6 is not. UC checks out the Finnish heavy metal scene, and Joe went to Disneyland. Enjoy the show. This is Wireless Banter Show. Here we go. Joe and UC.
Woo.
All right.
So announcer. That was very nice.
The announcer was excellent. The music was so loud we couldn't hear the announcer.
We'll have to work on that one. It was still good. I was just going to say, I think that's as far as we planned this show out, too. So I think we're pretty much off the rails from the rest of the show on, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, I don't think, we didn't plan anything else. And so I think we've basically accomplished everything that we wanted to accomplish. So we could just end it now, right? Maybe we should quit while we're ahead.
That's as far as we got.
So first up, Jerry, you're going to talk about Wi-Fi 6. Is that correct?
I don't know. Is that the opening act here, or did UC want to kick things off?
You guys need to arm wrestle for it or something?
I can go. So what did our mystery announcer just promise? Do you recall?
I couldn't hear any of it, so we have no idea. Which basically means that you have got the freedom to do whatever you want because no expectations have been set.
That sounds quite fantastic. Can you guys see my screen though?
We can. And while you're finishing setting that up, I think it's a good idea to set, just to kind of go through some housekeeping items during the course of this webinar. And I think that if you're in this show, I think you know what to expect. I think you know what to do here. But just in case you've never joined, well, actually, none of you have ever joined the Wireless Banter Show before because this is, in fact, the very first episode. And I don't think we really know whether this is a podcast or a webinar or a show. What is it exactly? I guess we'll figure that out as we go. But during the course of the show, please feel free to interact with us using the chat. We may or may not take phone calls from the audience. We'll see how that goes. And feel free to interact with us there. And are we going to use the Q&A, guys, or are we just going to use the chat? How are we going to do that?
I'm down for both. I've got the Q&A set up where people can see the questions that have been asked and upvote them. But we'll try and interact over the chat as well.
Yeah, so feel free to chat with us. If you have a question that you want to ask, then feel free to click the Q&A button and ask it there. You can also upvote other people's questions if you see one that you find interesting. And yes, this is Mitch. Can you not call me right now? I think it's because I said we might be accepting phone calls. This one's getting denied. Already messing up the show. Good job, Mitch. But we are recording this, and UC, correct me if I'm wrong, but this will be posted to YouTube today. Is that correct? Or maybe tomorrow?
Correct. And go to our YouTube channel. It's called, imaginingly, the Wireless Banter Show. Go on YouTube, find it, subscribe it, and then you'll get automatically all the latest updates. Behind the scenes material, show notes, the show recordings, everything. Jerry has promised to record an in-depth analysis and a huge report about each show of 10 to 15 pages, right, Jerry? Was that
sure.
That
sounds like something I would do.
yeah. So why not? Anyway, yes, YouTube channel, go there, subscribe. Also, those that sign up for the webinar, you will get the webinar recording link, I think, over email, or at least something over email. All right. Are we good to go, guys?
I think you can take it away.
Let's take it away. So my job, and let me know if you can't see the screen and the slides updating, but my job was really to look at metal and Wi-Fi, heavy metal and Wi-Fi, and just got curious about all these, if you go to badfi.com, you can see all these pictures of Wi-Fi being placed either inside metal or next to metal or whatever, and just saying that it's a big no-no. And I started wondering, well, is it really, and how does that manifest? And so I started looking into it and came up with a bunch of questions. I'd like you to ask a bunch of questions and then answer immediately, as they say in kindergarten cop. So I was like, okay, so how much metal is actually harmful, and how does that impact, for example, the obvious guys like retry rates, data rates, and would, for example, a brand new AP as on the left behave differently from an older AP with regards to data rates, retry rates? Data rates, probably, obviously. Retry rates, I don't know. What do you guys think? Jerry and Joel, you haven't seen my slides, so what do you guys think? How does metal affect Wi-Fi, and when does it and when does it not? Also the audience, now is the time to vote. How does it affect?
I would think that you would see higher retry rates, but then again, some reflections are actually good for MIMO. So my theory is that MIMO would actually work terrible in space where there's nothing to reflect off of. So it basically wouldn't work at all. So I have no idea. I have no idea what the results are going to be. I'm excited to hear your conclusions here.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I've seen is, a lot of times access points being installed right next to air ducting. And commonly when I do see that measuring the signal, I see a lot of big fluctuations in the signal. So I would expect that to equate to higher retries, just basically making that signal being more unstable. But, as Joel mentioned, you could have more of the constructive multipath, benefits as well. But typically metal and reflections and things like that, I would think would be, we would see some harmful results.
Absolutely. Unless you place them in the air conditioning ducts, if you put them in there, we know one person that could benefit from that Wi-Fi, right? The guy with the lighter, talking John.
Of course, die hard.
From the audience got that joke, but then there's only 4 people in the audience anyway, so we're good with that. Anyway, try to wrap this up before Jerry's main event and Joel's enormous post event begins. So my test setup was really a basic one with I was capturing packets with a 13-inch MacBook Air. I used Eager Tool from Adrian Granados. Love those tools. Also used Wireshark on the MacBook, as well as Wi-Fi Signal, also Adrian's tool. For packet analysis, I used both, again, Wireshark on the Mac, as well as OmniPeak on a Surface PC. And then I was using other analysis tools like Wi-Fi Explorer on a Mac to understand the signals and whether my AP was, even functioning, whether the data rate settings were correct and that kind of stuff. And same with WinFi on a Surface PC. I was simultaneously using 2 computers just to make things faster. And when it comes to clients and the APs, I was testing a couple of missed APs. Thank you for borrowing the APs. And then a legacy 802.11g only AP as well, just to compare. Then client devices, I was using Google Pixel 2, which is an AC one, Surface Pro, an AC one, and then an 802.11n mid 2011 MacBook Air. And then, just to be clear, this was not done in an RF lab. I was doing it here downstairs where we're now. You can see the studio audience. That's where I was testing it. It didn't look quite like that. Now, if Rob, for example, were to take the camera of studio audience and point it, hey, studio audience, can you point the camera to the enormous pile of metal that was used during the testing so you can actually see what it's all about. I think the computer is right next to the metal. Yeah, we know Rob. His head has some metal like Michael Knight, but that doesn't really reflect. Anyway, I also had had an internet connection that was fairly limited. So the testing was done on a Pixel phone. I just used speed tests and on the phone, captured packets for that phone, then limited the testing for that phone on both Wireshark and on OmniPeak. And then if we look at like a typical test scenario, so this is what I call the baseline test, where everything is okay. The AP is not near metal. The client is, as you can see, sitting on a sofa next to a cardboard box. And we can see, average data rates averaged out over a second are 1 mega or 100 megs when it's downloading and 50 megs when it's uploading. And these are Wi-Fi data rates as seen by OmniPeak. All right. And then if we look at the baseline scenario, again, phone on the sofa, AP not obstructed by metal, we can see that the retry rates are somewhere averaging around 5% or less. So the situation is okay. It's not ideal, but it's definitely not terrible either. So let's first put the AP on a metal plate. When we put the AP on a metal plate, we can see some increase in the download. So the AP is clearly hurting a little bit when it's transmitting off the metal plate, but not much. Even here, not much of a difference can be seen. But then let's put it to more of a test. Everybody notices this, right? So I took a old desktop computer case, ripped out the motherboard and the SCSI drives and whatever, and then just put in the AP, missed AP in there, and then closed the whole thing as clearly as I could. And then I even put some metal crates on the computer to really have it shut down. And guys, any guesses on the results? If the metal plate didn't do much, what do you think of this? If the metal plate was 10% or less retry rates, what about this? Joe, Jerry?
11%.
How much?
11%.
11%.
I feel like we're on Price is Right or something. 1%. 1% retry.
Did I win?
I'm just going to say 1% more than the last guy. Anyway, it actually hurt it a lot. So even with just a one client scenario, we're getting up to 40% and more retry rates, maybe averaging at 30%. Again, maybe on the downlink, we're seeing a bit more. And then, that's the 40% line. Thank you. Somebody knows how to operate. Wow.
That's why we bring Joel on these.
I got you, man.
His annotation skills are like no other.
Thank you.
It's all that time in MS Paint as a kid really paid off.
Nice, man. Worth every penny. And then I was like, okay, how can I make this possibly worse? I took a pinball machine, which is more metal. And then I also, this is actually not telling the entire truth. I'm putting the AP in a pinball machine, and Peter was just knocking the pinball machine, and it's part wood, actually, part metal. But I tried to obstruct or compensate for that by putting it in the coin box, which top is made out of metal, and the coin box just fit the missed AP21. And then the results were similar. Again, the 40% line is, it's right there. So it's very similar to the previous scenario. So the lesson so far, don't put your AP inside a computer. Don't put it in a pinball machine either, okay? Fair enough. So enclosed metal is bad, but a metal plate next to the AP doesn't kill it necessarily.
Wow, I'm going to have to redo a ton of my deployments because I've been putting them in pinball machines for years now. I've probably got 50 or 60 APs tucked in pinball machines all over the place.
A lot of people say that one AP per pinball machine. That's like debatable. So we can now say one AP per pinball machine is absolutely debatable. Then if we look at the data rates for the APs, I'm hearing some laughter from the studio audience. I don't know why. I'm hearing, so for the data rates, obviously they are fluctuating a little bit more than before, or actually a lot more. Previously they were stable, and now they are. Looks like we have a Stig, our own The Stig on this talk show as well.
How does that line go? And now it's time to hand over this AP or wireless tool or whatever to our tame wireless networking engineer.
Exactly. I think we'll be seeing more of this guy in the future shows or this show. Anyway, so comparing the baseline data rates versus pinball, we can clearly see that, of course, the data rates are fluctuating more when it's inside essentially a metal box, right? So that makes sense. Then I was like, how can I hurt this AP much more? And not a creative guy, the best I could come up with is just cover it with all kinds of metal crap I could find from a hardware store. So I went to a hardware store, bought these copper wires and metal plates and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the test scenario. The AP is actually in there. I also mounted a BMW wheel on the right, just to give it some more interference right there. And what happened? Darn, not nearly as bad as the computer. I'm shocked. But then it's not an completely enclosed metal thing. So I guess that's the reason. So these are again retry rates, and you can see they average out at less than 10% if you combine both download and upload. Wow, man. Then the typical scenario, this is what you see, like our favorite shot at badfi.com, right? AP next to metal pipe. So I was like, okay, that's the theory. I can get it with one client up to like 40% and typically no higher than 10% unless I really, abuse the system. What about if I place it next to metal pipes? It probably doesn't do much damage now, does it? And again, I have to emphasize this was done on a 2.4 gigahertz frequency so far. All of this 2.4. So AP next to metal pipes. And here we can see retry rates from a couple of different tests that I did. I placed it slightly differently between the metal pipes and got this. So it's actually the metal pipes are pretty bad for the AP. I was surprised given that my havoc scenario in the previous slides was this. And then it turns out the metal pipes are actually worse than my havoc scenario. There might have been something else come to play, but this is that same exact AP, same exact setup, and still happens. Then I moved the AP like 20 centimeters, less than a feet away from the metal. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was thinking
you said less than a feet. Less than a feet away. I like that.
Yes, less than a feet away, not 8 feet away.
Yeah. No, I would think even just moving it a little bit like that is going to have a big impact.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It doesn't solve the problem entirely, but it certainly helps to a significant degree. So even if you can take the AP like this much away from the metal, the retry rates fall down quite a bit. If we compare all these three, you can see that the baseline is at the bottom where there's no obstruction. You move it away from the metal by less than a feet. That's the middle picture, and the top is when it's on top of the metal pipes. Fair enough.
I think the interesting thing would be between the bottom two there is what is that distance that you need to get away from the metal before you don't see any noticeable impact from it.
That's true. Definitely future research right there. And then I was like, okay, this probably has to do with data rates. So can I kill it by just killing all the low data rates? Previously, I had the low data rates deliberately enabled. So let's just kill everything but 48 and 54. And let's see, if that kills the whole thing. And ta-da. And this is, again, AP on top of the pipes. It absolutely did not kill it at all. So it doesn't fall down because my distance wasn't great enough for the data rates to fall down enough. So if I had increased the distance and put it on top of metal, I'm sure we would have seen different results. Okay, so that was data rates. So next I thought, okay, let's take a legacy AP. So last night I went to a ghetto in next door to Helsinki. I had to drive to a ghetto and buy one of these and spend all of our production budget, 20 euros, on a Linksys WRT54GL, which is the high-end Linux version of this AP. and it came with preloaded firmware modified. Firmware was modified already for me, so all good. Drove that home, put it in a pinball machine. I even took out the antennas from the thing just to make it a horrible effect. And what happened? These are retry rates between 10 and 20%.
Not bad.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, of course it has to be so much worse in terms of retry rates, because an old AP, just two antennas on diversity mode, it just has to fail miserably compared to all these transmit beamforming, spatial multiplexing, 3x3 gizmos. But no, the Linksys one was actually just 20% or less. However, what's to keep in mind here is still the thing is that this guy, even though it's less retry rates, of course it is, because it's working at super low data rates. Mm-hmm. So even if the retry rates were really low, the data throughput for this client was super low as well. So the efficiency of the wireless network was horrible still, even though this AP was doing almost the best it can. You follow? So the missed AP, because it can provide so high data rates, even if it gets some penalty from the retries, it's still so much better for the modern clients. Okay, so as a summary, metal is bad, it causes retries, but often it's not the end of the world unless you enclose it, unless you have an enclosed metal box where you put it in. And also, by the way, I put it inside metal containers or like these semi-opened metal crate containers or boxes. And if you have wide openings, it does almost nothing. But if you have thin openings, then it does more. Then just move it a little bit away from metal, and you're better. And the assumption is you move it more away from metal, and you're good. And also, I forgot to put it in here, but I also did quite a bit of testing on 2.4 versus 5. And this is actually one of the key findings. What do you guys think? I think I probably told you this over chat. But 2.4 suffers like I explained. 5 gigahertz is very tolerant for metal, which was a surprise to me. So 5 gigahertz had almost no impact, at least on the modern missed APs. When it was close to metal, there was impact, but it was so much lower than with 2.4. However, there is this real world scenario. I was just talking with the Stig earlier today, and with our Stig, what should we call him? What is Stig in reverse?
The Gits, I think.
Yeah, so Gits, the wireless Gits, Wi-Fi Gits. Wi-Fi Gits actually helped me out today and was like, yeah, I've seen some of that. And in real world, you have more clients and you have bigger metal environments. What happens there? You're not supposed to speak, now they know.
Yeah, the Gits is completely silent. He's a mysterious figure in the background.
Exactly. We will just bleep that all from the recording and delete all the chats and all that. Anyway, so what actually, what did we see here? Or how was the, it was bad, right? So this is what did you call it? A freezer warehouse or something like that. A chilled distribution center. Where obviously cold.
Lots of reflections.
And how many clients was this?
150.
150 clients roughly, but in a certain space. How many clients would you see in here as you were looking at this trace, for example?
Probably about 70 clients.
70 clients.
Yeah, ABG. It's about, the whole distribution center is about 100 meters by 50. It's one big chiller.
Yeah.
So it's like being in a big fridge. It's a big metal box, and lots and lots of reflections, lots and lots of dynamic redshifting down to low arrays, lots of retries.
And was there anything you did to overcome this?
Yes. So the way to overcome it generally is if you capture it, and you look at the, you should see the dynamic rate shifting moving down from the top rate to the lower rate. And you'll find it drops to a certain rate where it can successfully transmit. So where basically the reflections are not causing an impact on the modulation. And then when you find that data rate, turn off all the data rates above it. So you actually disable the higher data rates. And that way you get rid of all the retries.
Cool. Thank you, Gits, Wi-Fi Gits. I'm sure he will have a Twitter account right after this webinar. All right. I think I have no idea what the time is, but I'm not saying that we are using dangerous equipment, but can you see what's inside the mask right there? It's a dead bug.
Nice.
Oh, it's alive. It's fine. This goes to speak to our production quality. A live bug inside the mask. Anyway, with that, anybody else want to do anything? I have no idea what the time is, but I probably went over significantly.
Well, we've got a couple questions related to your content, UC. I think we should go through. Question from James is: can you replace all of your missed APs with WRT 54Gs in difficult environments based on your results? I see Robert coming in there. All right, here comes Robert Boardman to defend missed honor.
To eliminate retries or minimize the amount of retries and minimize the performance of the network. I would say that's correct. That's correct. That's correct.
And I think that manually managing a whole bunch of WRT 54Gs manually, like one at a time, sounds like a great idea, right?
So I've got a 5,000 AP network for you to put some WGRTs.
WRT 54Gs. If you can't rattle that off, Boardman, if you can't rattle that off, you're not a wireless engineer.
Well, I mean, we have plenty of time, don't we, Jerry and Joel? I mean, we just recently got plenty of time in our hands, right? So,
well, I think the interesting technical piece of that is your testing is all being done from one AP to one client. Right. And I think, obviously, if we're doing this test in an enterprise environment like Peter's example, you're going to have many clients talking on that channel, and that's going to obviously greatly amplify those results. And yeah, if you have a consumer grade, WRT 54G, which, yes, I have owned several of those. And yeah, they succumb to multiple clients, pretty quickly trying to access that. So there's other limitations there besides their RF component.
Question from Chris Reed. Is that one of the only scenarios where you would want to disable higher data rates?
I can think of one. So there's been situations in the past with voice over Wi-Fi and running into issues where voice, you don't need high data rates, right? You need efficiency and reliability in those transmissions. So yeah, that's been a scenario before where we've looked at in different if voice over Wi-Fi is a critical component to the network, and you may have devices that don't behave properly and are always trying to use the highest data rate. Looking at things like potentially turning off some of the higher data rates can be beneficial in, a specific application, specific usage for that. Not that you always want to, but yeah, in certain situations.
Great. Well, I think if that's all the questions for UC's segment on the show, then I think that it's time to move on to our next. Yeah, go ahead. Huh? What?
I just wanted to show one more thing if I can, but if I can't, then,
Your time's up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys go ahead.
I'm just messing with you.
It's all right, Steve. Go ahead. What's the one more thing?
Oh, you're muted.
You're muted now.
Now you're muted.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Perfect. So what I wanted to show is the 5 gigahertz retransmission rate for an AP inside a pinball machine. So pinball machine, as we remember, was one of the worst situations. And this just goes to highlight how it looks like. You remember how it was like going up to 40% and averaging at 25, 30. I don't know if you can see my screen now.
I can.
So this is what it looks like, same AP inside a pinball machine, but just on 5 gigahertz. So 5 gigahertz, and I need some solid, evidence on the theory, but it just hurts a lot less when it comes to metal.
Yeah, it's interesting. My initial thought on it is around SNR and just being such a lower noise type environment typically, if that would be my guess, but I'm sure somebody in our studio audience or online audience probably would have a better answer for that.
Wonder if the Stig has anything to say about
you mean the Gits, the Gits
rates. Oh, Gits, Wi-Fi Gits.
Gits. Yes, the Gits.
It's the Gits. Word.
So I think you get less reflections at 5 gigahertz generally. So I think a lot of the issues around the retries come from the fact that the metal is caused by multipath and all the reflections. And because obviously the 2.4 gig signal is a longer wavelength, you're going to get more reflections. Those reflections are going to travel further. They're going to cause more interference just because of the properties of the wavelength, and therefore you're going to get more retries. Whereas it's 5 gig, you'll get less.
Fair enough.
That makes sense.
Makes sense. All right, guys, take it away.
All right, now it's my turn.
The main attraction on this episode of the Wireless Banter Show.
That's putting way too much pressure on me.
No, definitely the main attraction.
Should we have a jingle for the main attraction? The main attraction.
There it is.
Beautiful. Perfect. Nailed it. All right. So the main attraction apparently here is all about Wi-Fi 6. And, there's a lot of webinars out there about Wi-Fi 6 and what Wi-Fi 6 is and how great it is and all these kind of things. And I've seen a lot of kind of, now marketing materials and things like that have come out that have caused some confusion. So we're on the Wireless Banter Show here going to try to address some of those and, provide some clarity to some of these, more marketing kind of tactics and stuff that we've been seeing use, some of the terminologies and stuff that they've been using in that. So first, what is Wi-Fi 6? So for those of you that aren't familiar with Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6 really, comes down to the Wi-Fi Alliance creating this new naming convention for identifying these different generations of Wi-Fi technology. And specifically, under the IEEE, they have their 802.11 work group. And we've had these big amendments like 802.11n, 802.11ac, 802.11ax is the next generation. And the Wi-Fi Alliance decided we needed to put some naming behind that. So they created this Wi-Fi 6 to identify that's the 6th generation. And subsequently, then we now have things like Wi-Fi 5 that identifies things like 802.11ac and Wi-Fi 4 for 802.11n. So yeah, just to kind of lay the groundwork there if you're not familiar with that terminology. So let's talk about the technology itself then. So Wi-Fi 6, this is what is listed on the Wi-Fi Alliance's page about what Wi-Fi 6 claims to bring, right? Higher data rates, increased capacity, performance in environments with many connected devices, and improved power efficiency. Those are kind of the 4 key benefits that Wi-Fi 6 is claiming to bring to us. So I picked out, really the 4 key technologies within that I feel like do kind of address that. So I think, there's 4 main things that really stand out to me. And I'm by far, I'm by no means a Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax expert, but I do think it's a really awesome technology. And I do genuinely believe that it is going to be this kind of revolutionary thing for the wireless industry. We're seeing a lot of convergence with this into the cellular side, and we're going to talk about some of that. But yeah, I think there's 4 main kind of pieces of this Wi-Fi 6 technology. So some of the key enhancements, the first one, and I think the most prominent one, is OFDMA, and that stands for Orthogonal Frequency Division Multiple Access. So in Wi-Fi 5, we had and even Wi-Fi 4, we had OFDM. OFDMA is kind of an enhancement to that. And what that entails is it allows, one of the main components of that is it allows APs to be able to transmit data in one transmit opportunity to up to 9 clients at a given time. And that's on a single 20 megahertz wide channel. So that's, really unheard of. Wi-Fi all along, we've only been able to talk to, it's always been 1-to-1, right? So one transmitter can talk to another receiver, right? So only one at a time to one other device. So this really kind of opens up this new concept of one transmitter being able to talk to multiple devices at the same time. And how it's doing that is dividing up that channel. So it's not, and that's where some of this misconception kind of comes in is, it's using some different technology to do this. And that's what this is representing here. This is from the Aruba white paper. And I think kind of represents this, well of how these 20 megahertz wide channels can be subdivided up and how it can talk to different clients in a single transmit opportunity. So each one of these kind of vertical slices here represents a different transmit opportunity, and the different colors or kind of slices within there can all be different clients that single transmission is talking with. So you can see how it could be in the first one here, the 9 sub channels, that's a single transmit opportunity talking to 9 different clients. And then you can see here it can be divided up in different ways as well. And that's just across a 20 megahertz wide channel. So you can see how that can scale that way. Another technology that I think is really interesting, and I'm very curious on this one to see how, once this gets into the real world, how impactful this is going to be, BSS coloring. That's focused around increasing capacity by improving frequency reuse. So what that means is you could have 2 APs or 2 transmitters really both on the same channel. And today with previous Wi-Fi technologies, we call that co-channel contention or co-channel interference, where if 2 transmitters are trying to talk on the same channel, they have to contend for that airtime, right? Or a collision is going to occur if they do try to both transmit at the same time. With BSS coloring, it creates this new opportunity where if an AP hears another AP or a client on the same channel and they're using different BSS colors, it will ignore it and then won't have to defer that. Currently, it would have to defer and contend for the use of that channel. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to me of, what that's going to do to things like noise on the channel, retries, things like that, because obviously now it's going to be a trade-off of, okay, if multiple things are allowed to transmit on the channel at the same time, what is that going to do to the quality? But essentially what that kind of gives us is more transmit opportunities. So more things can be talking simultaneously on that channel to different transmitters and receivers.
So Jerry, recently we found out that Maru, who is famous for their single channel architecture, is discontinuing that. I kind of like to call Mitch back up to the stand here for a minute and kind of get his take on this. Mitch, is BSS coloring do you think this is the primary reason why Maru is no longer developing single channel architecture in their 802.11ax product upcoming?
No, I don't think so.
Gotcha.
I'll side with Jerry. I don't know all the ins and outs of 6 yet. Or excuse me, AX. So there's a lot of similar things from what I do know about it, that it almost appears as though, this is kind of, I don't want to say that it's been birthed from single channel architecture, I think, but there's a lot of similarities. So I think part of their decision, I'm not saying all of it, but I think some of it was that just some of the efficiencies that were gained with single channel and virtual cell, it's just not, I don't know. this is a bad way to put it, but it's not worth it anymore to maybe invest those dollars in it now that, they're gaining the efficiencies that, with Wi-Fi 6 that they were using with virtual cell. So I don't know.
It's kind of like diminishing returns at this point, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
gotcha.
part of it. That's part of it. So
Cool.
Yeah, and if anybody else on the line or in the audience here feels they have a good understanding of BSS coloring and how that's all going to work and look, love to have you jump on the mic here and give your explanation of it. But for now, we will move on. TWT is another one that I think is going to be interesting, and similarly, I'm very curious to see how this is going to impact things, especially from from mobile devices, but then also what new devices this is going to open up. So TWT stands for Target Wake Time, and really this is focused around energy savings, but also kind of providing some less congestion on the medium by allowing these clients to go to sleep and not having to constantly, transmit and potentially put more noise and energy on the medium. So being able to allow clients that don't need to be talking to be able to sleep for longer periods of time is obviously going to save a lot of battery life. Even if a client isn't transmitting, but it has to wake up every so many, at a certain frequency, a certain interval, that is all eating away at energy, right? So even though it's just receiving and listening to see, is there any data that's, waiting for me, that all eats away at time. We've seen multiple iterations of this kind of power save feature and things like that in previous generation of Wi-Fi, and different vendors implementing some of that kind of stuff in different ways, and some working better than others. But this is kind of a whole new take on that, and allowing things to actually sleep for significant periods of time and take these much longer kind of naps instead of constantly having to wake up to that beacon interval. So now we can see like these two examples that I shared here, figure 28 and figure 29. Figure 28 is using the UAPSD, the unscheduled automatic power save that we kind of know today. And you can see the teal color here, or kind of bluish color, is the sleep times. And you can see how much that client is able to sleep versus has to wake up and either transmit or receive data to stay connected to the network. Even if it doesn't really have anything that it needs to do, it has to constantly kind of wake up to stay connected. With this opportunistic PS or power save, there's this kind of
I really messed that up.
This negotiation there that allows it to stay asleep. So you can see how much longer that client is able to stay asleep through these beacons. It doesn't have to wake up for each beacon interval and use all its power to do that. So I think especially for Internet of Things devices, these lower power or even just being able to put smaller batteries in devices will be a pretty big game changer. And the last one on the Wi-Fi 6 key enhancements before we get into the real purpose of this, of kind of the Wi-Fi 6 is the new higher order modulation, MCS 10 and 11.
That's
gigabits, yes. Whoop.
Wow, that's a big deal, isn't it? It's the biggest deal of Wi-Fi 6.
Yeah, so max data rate goes all the way up to 9,607 megabits per second, which sounds pretty incredible, right? But let's look at the reality of that. So the reality to be able to try to achieve that data rate requires, first 160 megahertz wide channel, 8 spatial streams, and that's not just, okay, I just get an 8 spatial stream access point and I can achieve now on my laptop 9,607 megabits per second. No, that means 8 spatial streams, on both sides of that, right? On the transmit and the receive. So I don't think we're going to be seeing any 8 spatial stream laptops anytime soon. And then also being able to achieve MCS 11, which that in and of itself is, I think going to be very difficult to obtain given the SNR that's going to be needed to be able to, achieve that 1024 QAM.
No, Jerry, I think there's rumor that actually the MacBook Pro 16 will mean exactly that, 2 times 8 spatial streams. Just saying.
Wow.
I'm connected with the industry, so the 16 isn't actually inches.
Well, I guess I could be I can be proven wrong when that announcement comes out. We'll wait and see on that. But yes, you can see here on the chart, this is just kind of a summary chart. This doesn't cover every scenario, but I highlighted in red in the red boxes here of what we're talking about new to the AX side of things. So that's all the 8 spatial stream type ones. Really, actually, even in 802.11 AC Wave 2, that standard did allow for up to 8 spatial streams, but we never saw a vendor actually implement an access point with 8 spatial streams. To my knowledge, it was always limited at 4. With AX, we're actually seeing vendors already implementing these 8 spatial stream access points, which that gets pretty confusing as well. And we'll get into that in the next section, I think, a little bit too, of some of the terminologies that are being used there. But yeah, if we take this 80 megahertz wide channel, 8 spatial streams, you can see even with that, with MCS 10 and 11, the data rates are getting into the 4,000 plus megabit per second data rate. Now that's not throughput. Keep in mind, you're only going to see potentially about half of that. But still, we're talking over a gigabit. But again, that's 8 spatial streams. You're not going to be seeing that on your phone, on your laptops, things like that. At best, what are we seeing? 3. I don't even think we've seen a laptop with more than 3 spatial streams, to my knowledge, right?
I think so.
And most phones, iPhone, you're going to see 2 spatial streams, 1 to 2 spatial streams on most mobile devices. Your highest end laptops, maybe 3 spatial streams.
And my understanding around that is primarily due to 2 things. First off, battery life. More radio chains consumes more battery. And
Yes.
Second, actual distance, physical distance between antennas. On a phone, it's very difficult to even get 2 antennas a significant distance from each other without making the phone bigger. So at least that's my understanding. I'd have to talk to a client antenna expert to really know for sure.
Yeah, and Ben brings up a good point too. If you see anything, even like a 4 spatial stream device, look at the cooling on that thing. So Ben says, and the heat. So yeah, those things produce a lot of heat when you've got those multiple radio chains and spatial streams.
So talking about 20 megahertz channels, and this might be a question for Wi-Fi Gits, who by the way is on Twitter now, the Gits. So question for you guys and Wi-Fi Gits would be like comparable 20 megahertz, comparable SNR, how much difference between AC and AX on the data rate side of things? Do you get huge gains? No RUs used, just 20 megahertz AX versus AC. What's
Save that thought. We'll
right.
talk about that. We'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. So I see we're already over the time that we set up for it, and we're finally getting into what I feel like is the actual meat of this show. So we'll keep moving through here.
Just talk twice as fast, Jerry.
We'll figure out this timing one of these episodes. So yeah, if you've got to. All right, so here's my top 10 list for things that Wi-Fi 6 ain't. Wi-Fi 6 ain't finalized, so that's the number 10 one. So what I mean by that is for practical purposes, yes, 802.11ax, the 802.11ax standard is finalized, as in all major features are closed. However, only some of the minor features are still being under discussion, deciding whether they're going to be dropped or they're going to be potentially moved over to like a wave 2 type approach, similar to what we saw in AC. So yeah, there's a couple of things there to be aware of. This isn't completely all locked down yet. So if you're looking at buying, whether you're looking at buying, infrastructure, APs or clients, be aware of some of these kinds of things. One of the other things on the Wi-Fi Alliance side is they're actually not certifying any Wi-Fi 6 devices as of yet. According to their website, they're projected to be, the certification process is projected to be finalized by in fall of 2019, so probably coming up here in the next couple of months. But then also some other things is like 802.11ax is currently at draft 3.1, and the ratification for that is estimated to occur not until December of 2019. So what that kind of leads us to is, making sure you're reading the fine print. So we're starting to see some of these devices that are out there that are listed as, 802.11ax or Wi-Fi 6. And we're seeing things like, what we see in the screenshot here with like, you've got some APs that are saying they're Wi-Fi 6 certifiable. You've got this one here that's listed as pre-standards based. I've seen them called things like Wi-Fi 6 compatible. So there's a lot of fine print that we're going to have to kind of get familiar with. And, if you're purchasing this kind of equipment, just be aware of some of those kinds of things. Like this one in particular saying pre-standards based, I believe is due to only supporting downlink OFDMA and not the uplink OFDMA. So that's going to be a requirement to be able to get Wi-Fi 6 certification is it has to support both uplink and downlink OFDMA. So that's a common kind of limitation that you may see on some of those pre-standards based APs, Wi-Fi 6 APs. All right, so number 9, Wi-Fi 6 ain't low power. So yeah, check your, be aware of, what your switches are able to provide PoE wise. Wi-Fi 6 is going to need a lot more power than we're used to. So everything that I've been seeing, all the enterprise APs are all requiring things like 802.11at, 30 watts of power. And then some of these even higher end APs where we're talking like 8x8 radios are going to require even potentially BT, which is up to 60 watt for the APs. So yeah, be familiar or get familiar with the different PoE standards if you're not already, and make sure you check the specifications on those APs before you order them, and then realize you don't have the power to be able to power these higher end APs, especially if you're maybe running like a legacy 802.11n or AC Wave 1. Those typically did not require PoE plus. You could usually get away with AF or 15 watts of power for those older APs, but most Wave 2 AC access points also required AT. So if you've got Wave 2 AC access points, you probably have the right power for those. The next thing is Wi-Fi 6 ain't replacing the need for proper Wi-Fi design. So yeah, I was thinking about this one, and I've seen some rumblings of like, all right, so we've potentially are going to have more spectrum with AX. We have this BSS coloring, all these things to help us with eliminating a lot of the challenges that we face with our Wi-Fi designs of co-channel contention and those kinds of things that are going to help with that. Does that mean that we don't need to do a proper design anymore? And I would say no. I mean, that doesn't eliminate the need for the proper design. We need to still be able to do those proper designs. Figuring out the right number of APs, locations, antennas, all those kind of things are still going to be extremely important. All right, number 7, Wi-Fi 6 ain't more secure without WPA3. So this one's an interesting one, and I'm curious if anybody in the audience has some clarity around this, because I was doing a bunch of Googling prior to the show here, trying to find some things documented. But I do recall hearing that the Wi-Fi 6 certification is not going to require devices requiring devices to have to support WPA3. I do think that most vendors are going to opt to, in these new AX access points, support WPA3 out of the box. But my understanding is the Wi-Fi 6 certification does not guarantee that device supports WPA3. Originally, I think it was supposed to be part of the Wi-Fi 6 certification, but I had heard somewhere through the grapevine that has now been dropped. But obviously the Wi-Fi 6 certification doesn't exist yet today. So we'll see what that ends up looking like when it actually comes out here in the next month or two. Number 6, Wi-Fi 6 ain't full duplex. This is probably the one that we see kind of grumblings about the most. Is this is where things get kind of confusing around like we see these marketing terms around like switch-like performance, and that's kind of led to, we've got OFDMA, and that allows the AP to talk to multiple clients at the same time. So that's essentially a full duplex, right? No, it still relies on things like the CSMA, CA, the carrier sense multiple access collision avoidance to contend for that access medium. It's still half duplex. But yes, because of things like that multi-user OFDMA and multiple clients being able to transmit at the same time, or or a single AP being able to talk to multiple clients, people tend to confuse that with it being full duplex. And that's not the case. It's still half duplex, but it's able to divide that channel up, that 20 megahertz wide channel, into multiple subcarrier, and using different configurations of subcarriers, those resource units, to be able to talk to multiple clients simultaneously. Just Do Wi-Fi on Twitter, he actually put together a nice blog post around specifically that topic, and some other kind of ones that are around Wi-Fi 6 and some of the confusion there. Number 5 on Wi-Fi 6 ain't. It's not about making Wi-Fi faster. We talked about this 9 gigabits of data rate and things like that. So I just want to make sure that we clear the air there. Wi-Fi 6 is not about that. 802.11ax, that standard was not focused around, hey, how can we make Wi-Fi go faster, right? Its goal is around improving efficiency, which relates to things like lowering latency, increasing the capacity of these BSSs, the individual cells, how many clients can be connected to that AP, and by doing that, it can increase the average throughput. So through a lot of those technologies that we talked about, it's all focused on, how many clients can that AP support, and all have a good experience, right? And right now, or at least with like 802.11ac, that was all about increasing the raw kind of speed, right? The top speed of the network. Now it's all about increasing the efficiency of that network.
Yeah, and it's like not just average throughput, if you don't mind, but the aggregate throughput of all the clients in the network, right? It is about making Wi-Fi faster in general, but just not the single client. But yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And this is to your point before, you see around the data rates. I just went through like the MCS chart and kind of used 2 devices as an example. So if you take a 2 spatial stream device, which is pretty common with most higher end Android or Apple phones, so you take a 2 spatial stream device. Let's take like an iPhone XS. That's a 2 spatial stream 802.11ac device. Its max data rate on an 80 megahertz wide channel using MCS 9, which is the top MCS rate for AC, would max out at 86.7 megabits per second, right? You take a Galaxy S10, put it on the same kind of AX architecture where you've got same 80 megahertz wide channel. Now you're using MCS 11. We could potentially see up to 1,200 megabytes, 1,201 megabits per second. So we're not talking about, it's a fair amount, a couple hundred megabits per second more that we can get out of AX, but that requires much higher SNR, right? To go from MCS 9 to MCS 11, you're going to have much higher SNR to be able to obtain that. And there's a really good MCS chart out there. I think Francois on his blog, that's where I pulled this information from, where he's got all that listed. So if you want to kind of cross-reference some of that and see different channels, different widths, how that's going to impact things, 1 spatial stream, 2 spatial stream. And actually, just to back up there too, notice how, with a 2 spatial stream device, if we're talking a max data rate of 1201, you can see, you're not going to actually get anywhere near that kind of throughput. So let's say we get half of that on the actual throughput side, that's 600, we're not coming anywhere near a gigabit with those 2 spatial stream devices. All right, so number 4, Wi-Fi 6 ain't 5 gigahertz only. So this is an interesting one. This was kind of an eye-opener for me. Like, I knew that Wi-Fi 6 wasn't 5 gigahertz only, but to actually see it, on like a scanner or something like that, where you're actually looking at 2.4 and you're not just seeing N. I'm so used to seeing 802.11n, G, N, those kinds of things on 2.4, but now I actually see a new technology on there, a new PHY type. Is pretty cool. So finally with 802.11ax, we show 2.4 some love, and it now also operates in the 2.4 band. Some things to be aware of is, even though, it's AX is operating there, we don't get the benefits that you have in 5 gigahertz, like 80 or 160 megahertz wide channels. We're still limited to 20 or 40 megahertz wide channels. Really, realistically, we still have the same amount of spectrum, so you're still going to be limited to really that 20 megahertz wide channel. But really, from what I could tell, the 2.4 gigahertz kind of gets all the other benefits. The other thing that I did find is that pretty much all the vendors are kind of limited at a max of 4 spatial streams on the 2.4 side. I don't see any other vendors implementing anything on the 2.4 radio with more than 4 spatial streams. If I'm wrong on that, feel free to correct me in chat there. But we're on the 5 gigahertz side, we'll see up to 8 spatial streams. On the 2.4 side, I don't think we'll see anything more than 4 spatial streams.
Hey, Jerry, the audience is yelling "Free Joel" from Chains. As far as I'm reading the chat, right? So
yeah. Well, it's 1 p.m. and I have a meeting in 10 minutes that I have to go to. And you guys talked for so long that we didn't even get to my segment, like not even close. And so all this material, you know how many seconds I put into preparing for this, Jerry? Do you have any idea? I put in
this whole time I've been talking.
Well, yeah. I mean, but still, it was time invested, right? So you don't even get to talk about my stuff. So thanks for that, guys. Much appreciated.
Right. Your topic's not important. That's all right.
Oh, I see how it is. Wow. All right. Well, we'll see if you guys even get to have me on in the next wireless banter show, because I don't even know if I'm going to be involved now. I don't even know if I want to go. So, but seriously, I do have to go. So I'm going to leave you guys to it. And don't worry, my segment wasn't that great anyway. Mitch, why are you calling me right now of all the times to call me? But I'm going to leave you to it with Jerry. These guys will take good care of you. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. And next time, the main feature will be from Joel Crane.
It's the Joel show next banter show.
Nah. See you guys.
See you, man.
All right, so 3 more. Wi-Fi 6 ain't nothing without Wi-Fi 6 clients. So we've been talking all about the APs, but we've been neglecting the clients here, and really that's a pretty key part of Wi-Fi 6, right? So if we don't have Wi-Fi 6 clients, we're not going to see all those awesome benefits that we talked about in the beginning around Wi-Fi 6. We have started to see some Wi-Fi 6 clients starting to appear. The main one that seems to be, at least on the mobile device side, is the Samsung Galaxy S10. But there are a few chipsets out there. I think Intel has one, and some people have been popping those, upgrading their chipsets in their laptops to test some of that out, and seen some other creative uses of like some single board computers putting in a 8211AX Wi-Fi chip to test that. But in the real world, we're not really seeing a whole lot of Wi-Fi 6 clients, right? I don't know if anybody knows of any other major devices out there. Obviously, Apple will have likely a big announcement tomorrow. Not going to hold my breath for any Wi-Fi 6 clients, but that would be a pretty telltale sign if we're going to be seeing a lot of Wi-Fi 6 clients shipping in the next year or so.
So what do you think, Jerry? Yes or no to iPhone Wi-Fi 6?
I would be surprised. I would guess no at this point. That would be pretty unlikely of Apple, especially the fact that 8211AX is not even ratified yet. That doesn't seem very Apple-like, but I'd be happy to be proven wrong.
Yeah, same here. I'm gonna put a no. You're gonna put a no, and Stig is gonna put a yes.
Ooh.
So clearly, of course, Gits has some inside information there.
Cool. I would be happy to see that. Okay, so in 2020, the majority of Wi-Fi devices are projected to be shipping with Wi-Fi 6. By 2022, it's projected that 1 billion Wi-Fi 6 devices will be shipping annually. There is a wiki Devi page there if you want to check out a list of 8211AX hardware and see all the latest APs and devices and stuff that are Wi-Fi 6. Number 2, Wi-Fi 6 ain't 5G. So I've been seeing a lot of, things about, 5G and Wi-Fi 6, and it's starting to kind of muddy the waters of, is Wi-Fi 6 part of 5G and those kinds of things. And I think where a lot of that stems from is we're starting to see a lot of similarities between the two technologies. Wi-Fi or 5G is the latest cellular technology, And we're seeing a lot of, kind of sharing of technologies between the latest cellular or LTE kind of standards and the Wi-Fi 6 standards. So it's going to be interesting, and I think we're going to continue to see that convergence. But just be aware these are two separate technologies that have some pretty good similarities between the two of them, and I think we're going to start to see more and more crossover between those two worlds. All right, so the number one thing that Wi-Fi 6 ain't. Wi-Fi 6 ain't 6 gigahertz, right? So this is another kind of confusing one because we've got this now new 6 number that's associated with Wi-Fi, and now we've got all this talk about 6 gigahertz. So it's starting to kind of muddy the waters there of, does Wi-Fi 6 mean 6 gigahertz? So they're separate, but there are some reasons for that, and the fact that the talks of 6 gigahertz, this new spectrum that's becoming opened up and available, is going to be 802.11ax only, right? So when this becomes available, and it's saying in 2020 we're supposed to get this new chunk of spectrum, and in the US, 1.2 gigahertz will be made available in addition to the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrums that we already have for Wi-Fi. So it's a huge amount of spectrum. And the cool thing about it is that new 1.2 gigahertz of spectrum is going to be nice and clean without any legacy technology, right? So that's going to be purely AX technology. We're not going to, open it up to AC or previous generation Wi-Fi standards. And that is the content I had for this show.
Thank you, Gerbil. That's some pretty rocking content. So we should talk about some of these things in future shows, right? Wi-Fi 6 and 5G come to mind, at least, right? And now that we're getting towards the end, what about the next episode in a month, maybe? What do you guys think? Either way, maybe in a month, right, Jerry? What do you think?
Brad says tomorrow. Let's just do a daily. Daily show. I think we can pull that off, right? You guys don't have anything on your schedule.
We could just read out loud vendor data sheets and canned PowerPoints, right? But in a month or something, and join us. Check out our webpage. I think we'll have the next webinar on the webpage pretty quickly. And please, I think after this webinar, there should be a questionnaire, SurveyMonkey questionnaire popping up that, if you don't mind filling, that would be great, so that, we get some feedback and we can actually, make this useful for you guys.
And our bosses read those too. So yeah, please fill those out.
We have a pretty strict rating system. Please rate 5 stars on everything. Please rate 5 stars on everything, because otherwise our bosses, we have quotas and numbers to make, right? Okay. Hey, thank you so much. It's been a pretty hectic start, and to be honest, I was at least super nervous. And Jerry, hey, we went, on hundreds of registrants, and also on the attendance side, we went well into 3 figures. So congratulations, man. And congratulations to non-existent or absent Joel for leaving the show early. Thank you, Gits. Thank you, audience. Thank you, studio audience. You've been great. Not that they're listening anymore.
Yeah, they're watching TV in there. They moved on to something else.
Those are just random people that we put on camera on. Anyway, come back, please. We'll send the recording for you guys tomorrow. And is there anything else we should say, Jerry?
I think we've done enough bantering for one day.
All right, that sounds fair. So it's off to this, I guess.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you remember to press record, Jerry?
I did. Yes. I should probably stop the recording.
Of course, I did not, of course.